to have with me Vatsala Sadasivan. I want to give a quick introduction to Vatsala, but before I do, just some reminders on the housekeeping. If you have any comments, questions, or just thoughts to engage with the participants, engage with us as presenters, please share so in the chat. If you have a question in that drop down, you can actually directly share it in a question format, and we'll be able to answer that in the Q&A at the end of the session. So I have a pleasure to introduce Vatsala. Vatsala is a seasoned leader in strategy, business transformation, and operational excellence with a focus on biopharmaceutical industry. She boasts over 16 years of experience in a diverse skill set encompassing business, technical, and organizational expertise. Her professional journey has taken her through 4 different biopharmaceutical companies spanning 3 continents, covering everything from research and development to clinical and commercial manufacturing operations. Vatsala is currently serving as the Global Operation Excellence Lead for Research and Development at, I believe I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Sanofi. In this capacity, Vatsala leads and oversees the Operational Excellence Program on a global scale. Before taking this role, she held the position of Head of Operational Excellence for Research and Development North American region. Her journey with Sanofi included various operational excellence roles in the manufacturing and supply sector. It sounds like you're at not only a international but a global and just, dare I say, universal leader in research and development when it comes to this topic. So Vatsala, so happy to have you here. I'm going to pass it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Vatsala Sadasivan. I'm currently leading operational excellence for Sanofi's R&D business globally, as Andy has mentioned. So just maybe a very quick background. I spent most of my career in operational excellence in the manufacturing industry, as Andy has mentioned. I would say at least 7 or 8 years there, and then I moved to the R&D space about 6 years back to apply operational excellence in the R&D space. And today's talk is going to be focusing on how do you apply principles of operational excellence in the R&D space, because it's a new space. You know, it's not common. It's a growing field. I think it's still very immature. These principles are primarily applied in the manufacturing space, as all of you probably know. That's where it came from. But it is very challenging to apply it in the R&D space. However, we need it more than any parts of the organization there, because in R&D, efficiency is not looked at. It just doesn't go together, R&D and efficiency, because you're talking about a space of creativity. So the impact is large in terms of anything you touch and apply operational excellence. So the talk is going to be, just based on my experience, why is it challenging to apply operational excellence in the R&D space? How is it different compared to the manufacturing space? And then how do you then overcome these challenges and develop a roadmap with some example of case studies? So what I'll be going through is first to share with you the challenges in developing an operational excellence and a transformation roadmap. So here we use the word transformation as well. So again, I think we see these words interchangeable: operational excellence, transformation. Do they mean the same? Are they different? Are they the same? So I've come to the conclusion that actually they are all in the same field. Transformation just means it's acceleration. That's the only difference. So you want to improve something much quicker at a more rapid speed, and versus continuous improvement, which takes a little bit longer time. So I'll share with you what's the challenges to apply these principles from an organizational and a cultural standpoint in the research and development space. And then understanding these challenges, then how do you develop a roadmap for the R&D space with some case studies, and then closing out with some best practices and lessons learned. So firstly, since this is focusing on healthcare, I'm not going to go through this in detail.
Vatsala, I hate to interrupt. I believe the way you're sharing, so we just see the PowerPoint slide. I don't think we see the presentation. Just I hate to interrupt. So sorry.
Okay, no problem.
So we do see your screen, and we see the PowerPoint window. It's not in presentation mode.
Because it is, I am showing it in presentation mode.
If
Let me
maybe
just sharing and screen. Is it showing right now?
it's still showing the PowerPoint slide. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Thank you. So sorry to interrupt, but it sees it's in presentation mode right now. It looks great. Carry on.
Okay. No problem. So this is what I was speaking about just now. Sorry, since you couldn't see it, just to summarize again what I'm going to be speaking about is first going through and sharing with you what are the challenges in developing an operational excellence and transformation roadmap in the R&D space from an organizational standpoint and cultural. And then understanding these challenges, how do you then develop a roadmap? And then followed by some case studies and wrapping it up with best practices and lessons learned. So firstly, from an organizational standpoint, why is it challenging to apply operational excellence in the R&D space for drug development? So the first challenge from it comes from a value stream challenge itself. And most of you probably should be familiar with this since we're focused here more on healthcare in this conference. It takes a long time to develop a biological drug today, 10 to 12 years. And that's what you see here, the value stream from early research up till product launch. So if you compare this with the manufacturing space, you have like tens and hundreds of batches a year. So what that means is you have a lot of data. And as you know, operational excellence is about improving and optimizing. And data is very important. The more data you have, the better you can optimize your process, and it makes it more robust. So here you have less data because it takes so long time. One product you're talking about, which we call a project, takes 10 to 12 years. So that poses a challenge right there. On top of that, no one person owns this value stream end to end from the beginning, from early target identification to launch. So that's another challenge here again. And so this value stream is managed by many different cross-functional teams. So in the beginning, you have a research team that owns the value stream or leads it up till a lead candidate is identified. And then after that, it moves to another team called a CMC team, and then you have a clinical development team that takes over at some point, and so on and so forth. So the fact that no one person owns this value stream, that makes it highly matrix again. So that's another challenge you have in terms of if you want to make any improvement, even in this x-axis, which I call the technical drug development process. Even to make changes to that axis, you have to work with a transversal team. And then on top of that, if you put the y-axis, so these are the business processes that enable your drug development process. It makes it even more challenging. So these business processes are highly important. We don't realize that in the research and development space because people pay more attention to the technical drug development, which is the value stream. But these business processes are enablers. You need them. If you don't have these, you're not able to develop the drugs. So, and these example of processes are procurement processes, supply chain, regulatory, quality, contract management. And these processes are owned by R&D does not own it. They are basically large corporate processes. So to make any changes to these processes, again, it's very difficult. You have to work transversely again with corporate teams to explain why we need to make changes to their processes. And what we've found is that, in fact, the inefficiencies in the drug development process, a lot of it today is because of these business processes. It's not that we don't have good technical scientists, we have excellent scientists, but we lack automation, we have processes, the procurement processes that slows down the drug development process. So these are enablers, but at the same time, we're finding that they're bureaucratic, inefficient processes that are impeding our drug development process. So it is highly important to understand this complex matrix architecture of R&D in order to apply operational excellence. The fact that it takes so long, the value stream process, the lead time, and nobody owns the process from a drug development standpoint, end to end, nor the business processes. It poses a highly matrix landscape. And then from a cultural standpoint, I think that's another important piece to understand. So in R&D, you're dealing with scientists and doctors. So when I think back on my experience coming from the manufacturing part of the function, naturally you have people who are process thinkers and very system thinking, because manufacturing is set. You have defined processes, there's a rhythm. So efficiency is part of it. In fact, it's the bread and butter of manufacturing. You need to you make sure that you are delivering the batches on time to the patients, saving costs. This is extremely important. But in the R&D space, it's very different. You're dealing with scientists these are creative and innovative people. They think very differently, and you can see it takes 10 to 12 years. So inherently for them, they're not thinking about efficiency. In fact, when you start applying these principles of operational excellence, they start feeling like you're boxing them into a box and you're impeding their creativity. Yeah? That's really how they feel. And in fact, they've come up to me several times and mentioned this, that how can you apply these principles to us, to the R&D space? We're not manufacturing. We are in a creative environment. This doesn't apply to us. But the irony is that on a day-to-day at the bench level, scientists are struggling, as I mentioned, with bureaucratic processes they have to deal with, which takes away their time from doing science. So it actually, they need operational excellence. In fact, that's the irony. So it's about I think the cultural challenge is, how do you make them realize that actually operational excellence is going to help you to do better science? Because by operating more efficiently, you can do better science. It's not impeding your science. So that's the cultural challenge. Now, understanding the organizational and the cultural challenge, then how do you develop an operational excellence roadmap or a transformation roadmap? Again, I use these two words because overall, they are the same. The difference with a transformation roadmap is just that speed. It's done in a much quicker time frame. So in the R&D environment, I've done benchmarking across various different companies across the pharmaceutical industry, attended many conferences, and even tried to benchmark with other industries such as aviation, oil and gas, automation. What I found is that an operational excellence system and model does not exist today for R&D. Everybody's struggling. It's still very young, but it's starting to grow, and we need it. What we have in the R&D space is a strategic roadmap that's usually well defined with your strategic pillars and your objective. But what people are not realizing, even at a leadership level, is you need an execution roadmap. How do you execute your strategy into operational solutions? That's essentially operational excellence roadmap here. And it's different than your strategic roadmap. And in fact, it's an enabler to execute the strategy. So there's no standardized system or model that exists today, like a Toyota production system for R&D. So you have to build it. So this is an example of a roadmap that I've used, which consists of 3 pillars. These are operational pillars: capacity, capability, and processes. The goal of the capacity pillar is making sure I have enough capacity from a people standpoint, resources, FTE, space, footprint, and also equipment. So all these 3 are really important. So in order to achieve our vision, our vision, do we have enough people, enough equipment, and also the footprint we need to execute the strategy? And then capability pillars, the goal of this pillar is to make sure we have the people capability, and second is the technology and innovation, which is the heart of R&D. So people capability is basically, do we have the right competency and skills and the organizational structure to execute the strategy. You can have enough people to execute a strategy, but you need to make sure you have the appropriate competency and skills, and also the organizational structure. And the other capability is making sure that we are staying up to date and implementing best-in-class technology, and this digital solutions as a key piece as we see today. And the third pillar is processes. So this is about identifying the key bottleneck processes that I've shared earlier in the both axis, in the value stream axis and the business process. You got to look at both, because the bottleneck could be in either axis, and then you identify which are the processes that are a bottleneck to execute your strategy, and you go after them one by one. You simplify and optimize them one by one. So now, and then after that, you still need to measure your performance. So that's, again, extremely important. And what I found in the R&D environment, measurement is not as critical. People don't measure as much. I mean, it's quite shocking to hear, but it is, and this is not just in our company. Through benchmarking, it's the same feedback I've received across different companies, different industries. It's because of the nature of the R&D environment. But measurements are extremely important. We know that we're in R&D, but we're still a business. We're not a charity organization. At the end of the day, it is a business. We need to produce, and there's deliverables. So in terms of measuring performance through the benchmarking that I've done, the key measures in the R&D space I've listed here. One is productivity. So in the highest level of scale, it would be a number of products in the pipeline versus your FTE, basically your outputs or inputs. So that's one piece. Time, we know with COVID, we cannot take 10 to 12 years anymore to develop drugs, medicines. We need to reduce time, which translates to speed, basically. You know, how do we increase the speed of the product to market? Cost, though it is less of a focus in R&D compared to the manufacturing space, but it is becoming more and more critical now. Reducing costs, we feel it. So, and this goes into your operating and capital, operating costs and your capital expenses. You need to look at both. And then, because we're R&D, while we measure all of this business values, we still need to maintain agility. In fact, we need to be able to increase our agility because we're R&D. We're not set and still. We're not, product is not commercialized. So I think that's the challenge here. How do you do all this while maintaining agility as well? So with this kind of this homemade model that I've shared, I'm going to share with you a case study how we applied this model to a highly technical drug development process, and how we applied these business principles, which are the operational excellence principles, and showed that how it can have a significant impact from a performance standpoint to a technical drug development process. So the case study here is about increasing the productivity of cell line development process. Cell line development is one of the processes within the drug development value stream process. So it's a critical process, as you see in the bottom. I shared with you the value stream, which is the 10 to 12 years lead time. The cell line development falls between research and development, is the first step in the development of a drug, of a biologics product. So it's a bridge between research and development. And I oftentimes use the word, it's a life of the drug, the cell line, because you make only one cell line for one product. And that cell line carries through the entire R&D value stream, and it also then also continues in the commercialization of the product as well. Once it goes to market and we manufacture the same cell line, so you only produce one cell line for one product. And so what was the problem here? Why did we have to increase the productivity of the cell line? The issue was that we have been facing an increase in biological product pipeline, more than 50% within a year. So we need to make more than 50% biologic medicine drugs within a year. And these products, in fact, are also becoming more and more complex. as we see, we have cell and gene therapy. Then we also have bispecific, trispecific, different modalities. So you have a more diverse modality and more complex molecule on top of that. So what we identified is that the cell line development, the process, is a bottleneck to R&D. Basically, we will not be able to meet the future product pipeline if we don't do something about it, because the current cell line development process will not be able to manage this pipeline essentially. So the project goal here is to increase the cell line development capacity by 2 times within 2 years without increasing headcount significantly. That's the project goal. So now it becomes a very classical operational excellence exercise if you think about it. It's a productivity increase. I want to be able to do 2 times more with the same amount of people. That's really what it is, or even less people. That's what it boils down to. So then how do we solve this problem? So first of all, just to give you a quick overview, what is the cell line development process? In not going into the details, you start with the DNA sequence. So this is a digital sequencer, so it has no raw material involved here. And the end product, the output of the cell line development process is cells that can produce the drug. And in this process, what we found is that there are many governance decision-making steps. That's really important, because I think that's something that the scientists don't realize. People just thought it's a technical process, but the governance steps are really important because they're decision makers. You cannot move to the next step without going through these governance steps. So that's the other thing we had to, when we mapped out, we had to make sure it was really clear. And then we had to figure out a way how we measure the performance of the cell line development process. So for our goal, the key business value that we need to measure is productivity. And this is again business. It's not a technical cell line productivity, because some people may get confused, because that's like the titer of the concentration of your cells, but this is the productivity of the process. So this is measured as number of cell lines per year. So today I can make X number of cell lines per year. In 2 years, I need to make 2 times more that cell lines per year. And also, how long does it take to develop 1 cell line today? That's another performance measure, which is time, but that is again not our bottleneck. Productivity is the main bottleneck that we are trying to solve here. So how did we solve the problem? Firstly, we utilize operational excellence. So we use a structured operational excellence methodology, very simple, straightforward, process mapping, basically a value stream process mapping, where we identify every step. Now, what are the steps involved? In each step, we identify what are the inputs that goes into each step, from a resource standpoint, raw material standpoint, any equipments needed, documentation, and then what is the output of the step, who's the customer of the next step. So by doing this for the end-to-end process, then we map the gaps out, across every single step. And from the gaps, we identified solutions and then prioritized. And from there, we developed our high-level project plan, which is the roadmap, essentially. So what did we find out when we did this? So one of the key challenge, what we found out when we did this exercise, is the complex interfaces. And this is something that shocked the scientists, because people thought the issue is about a technical process. But in fact, just as I mentioned early on in the presentation, the business process interfaces were the ones that were creating the most noise. The technical process, there are some steps where we need to optimize, but the business process was the one that was taking away a lot of the scientists, cell line development scientists' time away from the lab. So instead of developing cell lines, these scientists were spending a lot of time in managing these business processes, because these processes were lacking or they were too complex, so such as finance processes, IT processes, because the process was highly manual, procurement processes, because we had to outsource certain testing, so you have to deal with procurement processes, shipping and logistics. We had to ship the cell lines from from US to Europe and vice versa, in order to develop the cell lines. Then also the external outsourcing processes, so CRO processes, that also was causing a lot of issue as well. So in terms of how we overcame the challenge, one is we utilized the structured operational excellence methodology, as I shared. The other important point to stress again is the transversal collaboration is highly needed in the R&D environment. It is because of the matrix landscape, which I shared earlier on, and that's the reason exactly why we need it even more. We need transversal collaboration. So R&D forces you to become highly collaborative. That's the nature of the environment, and you got to work with people across R&D and other parts of the organization, support functions, in order to make these changes, especially the support functions, so because they own the business processes such as IT, procurement, finance. So here, just to summarize this case study, what were the key gaps before we addressed it? We achieved the goal of where we want to go. So the cell line development, as I explained to you, they could produce X number of cell lines per year, and the gaps were that they had capacity constraint, but they were not sure where the bottleneck is. Is it a people capacity constraint, or is it equipment, or is it because we don't have enough space? Because of that, we don't have enough equipment. The team felt constrained, but they couldn't tell exactly where the constraint was. The process was fully manual, end to end. The data management end to end of the process was fully manual. The testing, so there's a lot of testing that needs analytical testing that goes on to develop the cell lines. So there was the internal analytical testing was already constrained. That team was already constrained. They couldn't meet the demand of the cell line development process. Now, if we have to increase 2 times more, definitely we know that the analytical testing internally will not be able to manage it. Then we also had external testing performed by CROs, and only one CRO, so we had no backup. If anything happens, we'll be in trouble, because the cell line development process supports the global product pipeline of Sanofi, so that's the crucial thing here. And then on top of that, there were key business processes that were inefficient, that was creating noise to the cell line development process. And the core ones here, one is governance process, another one is shipping and logistics. The other one is the external testing process, basically, and the report writing process, was highly manual, the whole report writing. So in order to get to our future state, which is to be able to develop 2 times more cell lines per year, how do we get there? That's the operational excellence roadmap that we define. So this roadmap, as I explained to you, we did the process mapping exercise, and from there we applied the model that I showed earlier, the 3 pillars, the capacity, capability, and processes, and from there we developed the solution. So this roadmap consists of 3 pillars and 16 goals, and these goals are solutions. So if we implement all of these goals, we should be able to reach our overall case study goal, essentially, which is able to develop 2 times more cell line within 2 years with insignificant increase of headcount. So the goal of the capacity pillar is to optimize people and equipment capacity. That was really the key focus here for this case study. The goal of the capability pillar here was to bring in the best-in-class technology and innovation. From a people capability, it was not a problem. We had the right competency and skills, so that was not a bottleneck. And processes was to identify the key bottleneck processes and simplify them. So I can't go through every single one today, unfortunately, because we don't have time, but they touch all aspects of the business. So they touch from digital processes to procurement to finance. So it gives you a good flavor of the different kinds of challenges within a technical process. So I'm going to share with you some examples within this roadmap, some of the goals, and how did we solve them. So in the capacity pillar, one of the goals was to develop a capacity model. In fact, the team did not understand what was their current capacity. So if you don't understand your current capacity, how are you supposed to know, can I meet the future business needs? Or what is my theoretical maximum capacity? Also, they were not able to answer that question. So the first thing we had to do is to develop a capacity model. And what we did here is we utilized principles of manufacturing. In fact, this is operational excellence principles. We developed a scheduling system essentially for the cell line development process. Even though it's an R&D process, you still have process steps. You have a start and you have an end of the process. So you're able to develop, think of it like a scheduling system. So what, instead of in the manufacturing world, you call it scheduling, and you can see which batch, how do you produce. This scheduling system will tell you when it's which batches are going to be manufactured when. Here is projects basically. So the cell line development process is supporting multiple projects. Each project is a product, essentially a drug. So the key piece here is the project start frequency. How often can I start a new project basically? So if we can go back to the business and say that, you know what, we can only make 8 drugs because this is how the scheduling works. Or in order to, if I need to make more, how do I optimize it? So it becomes a business strategic tool, this capacity model, to make decisions in terms of having the people capacity and also equipment as well. That's another thing. And then another example from the capacity pillar is, another goal here is to outsource a particular step. So what we found is there was a step here that was taking up a lot of man days, scientist time, and also process time. And through the analysis we did, it basically, the optimal thing to do is to outsource. By outsourcing, we'll be able to save a lot of scientist man hours, and in fact, it'll be cheaper, and also there'll be a significant reduction in hazardous waste. So that's what we did here. And we were able to save a lot of man hours. So again, what you see here, every time you see the savings in man hours, this is the total man hours saved, the scientist man hours per year saved, the cell line development scientist hours. Anytime we save these man hours, it means that they can take these man hours and go back to the lab and develop cell lines. So that's really the measurement we're using here. This man hours translates to productivity essentially. And of course, at the end, man hours is also cost. You can measure your cost as well. So another example within the capacity pillar is another goal is to improve the analytics, resource planning, and assay support. As I explained to you, they were already limited before. If we have to do 2 times more cell line, they will not be able to do the internal analytical testing. So here we introduced automation. We automated certain steps for the analytical testing. We also automated data management and optimized ways of working. And just by doing that, we increased the productivity of the analytical testing process by 50 to 60% for those tests that were supporting the cell line development process. And on top of that, we were also able to save scientists' man hours as well. Then some examples within the capability pillar. So these are, it's slightly different. Here is about implementing innovation and technology. So there was one of the goals here was to implement automation for a particular step. So this was the clone generation step. It was very labor intensive and highly manual. So we automated the entire step. In fact, what we found is the best in class and best practice in industry is to automate. We were just left behind. We didn't realize that. So by implementing this automation, we were able to, again, save significant scientist man hours. Another example within the capability pillar, the goal was to implement, again, here was a particular technology with a high throughput equipment for a certain step here. This step had a long runtime. Also, the data was very manual. So by implementing this new, the best-in-class technology for this step, we were able to shorten the step, the time, and also automated the data analysis, which then translated to man-hour savings as well. Then within the processes pillar, one of the goals is to improve governance. So a governance process is really important in R&D because you're not making batches. it's running as a project mode. So if you think of it as a large project management, that's really what's needed here. And governance becomes very important. However, here what we found is that there was inefficient governance process, inefficient information transfer, and also decision making, like who needs to do what by when. And so what we did is we implemented clear roles and responsibilities. Who needs to do exactly when, which stakeholder needs to give what information by when, and when do we need the decision by. So we established requirements essentially, and from just doing that, scientists, cell line development scientists gained again man hours back. So here their role is not to be a project manager, they're supposed to be scientists developing cell lines, but because of lack of governance, they are running around compensating the lack of governance and becoming project managers, and that's not their role. That's really what we found out. Another example of a process here that is the external testing process. So we found that this to be a bottleneck as well. So here we had to simplify the external testing process. It's a procurement process. We found that it was a cumbersome multi-step process. And this is actually a finance and a procurement process both. So the number of POs, we were shocked. There was a significant number of POs needed just for one cell lines. So we basically worked with finance and procurement to reduce the number of POs and said, you know what, for one cell line, just one PO. Why do we need so many POs? So this is just basically control, it's putting extra controls and just being overly conservative. So we removed a lot of non-value added steps, and with that, this external testing process became 3 times faster, and we were able again to save significant man hours for the scientists as well. And finally, the last example I wanted to share is the shipping process. This was another bottleneck we identified. So we have to ship cells between the US and Europe and vice versa, and we found that the process to ship was highly complex. It was taking 30 days to ship cells. This is from the time a scientist initiates the request, I need to ship, till the material arrives on site on the other part of in Europe, essentially. And why does it take 30 days? In fact, we were joking internally to say that, I can just take this sample, book a flight right now for today, and I'll be in Europe tomorrow. So 2 days, it should just take 2 days. Why is it taking 30 days? And when we mapped the process out, what we found is that it was highly convoluted. There were 11 different roles involved just for one shipment. And one shipment takes 32 man hours. So this is a total man hour time for all the actors. What that means is 4 full working days of one person is needed just to manage the shipments of one cell line. And in order to meet the future business needs, we need to produce 2 times more cell lines, which translated to having more than half of an FTE just to manage the shipment of cells. So that is just not possible. I mean, if we're going to say that, we just need to hire half an FTE just to manage the shipping process. And in R&D, in fact, we don't just ship cell lines. We ship tissue, blood, plasma, viruses, animals. So this project, in fact, became a huge global transformation program that is still running today. We have not solved this shipping process yet globally, but however, all the other solutions have been implemented. And just with that, we've been able to meet the program goal essentially here, where we're able to produce now 2 times more cell lines. Basically, we're able to increase the productivity 100% with insignificant increase in headcount. You see that, like, that's basically as good as no increase in headcount. And on top of that, we're able now to meet the future pipeline, and we also have savings. Cost was not the key driver here. Cost savings was not the business value we were going after. It was productivity, but it was a bonus that we were able to have cost savings as well. So with this, I would like to conclude the talk with some best practices and lessons learned. So this is again coming from myself, from my journey in operational excellence from the manufacturing space, and now R&D having the whole end-to-end value stream experience. what I found is that operational excellence and transformation is still very young in the R&D space. We need to have more focus on it because it's highly needed, in fact, but there's a lack of awareness on it. And also it's more complex to do it. That's what I shared in the beginning, because it's a highly matrix organization. Because of that, it requires a transversal collaboration. A lot of time people just realize that it's just too difficult, and that's why they've never developed an operational excellence model today or a system for R&D. But however, it's needed, and you can do operational excellence. That's what I've showed you the case studies. But it requires adaptation of the traditional methodologies and tools. You cannot just take what has been designed for the manufacturing world, which is where these principles come from, and dump it and push it. It will not work. You have to adapt it to the R&D organization and processes. And it also requires cultural change within the R&D organization from the leadership level, in terms, so this is a big part of it as well, education as well. But however, the case studies I shared just now, I hope, demonstrate the impact of applying operational excellence to R&D, that, that actually it shows the impact in terms of how we can transform R&D into a highly efficient organization, and that it can help drive scientific excellence that is not going to impede your science. In fact, you can do better science by operating more efficiently. So with that, I'm going to stop, and happy to take any questions.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, Vatsala, for sharing that. I love seeing that process map of the shipment, how it takes. It shouldn't take that long. That was so cool to see, because I think businesses can get so big sometimes, or they're operating across so many different countries or boundaries, that there's just so many things lost in the process itself. Yeah, so if you want, you can stop sharing your screen now, and I think we have time for about one question. So with that, let's just jump right into, I think, a very, very powerful one here, which is, how do you manage large transformations? That's probably not a question that can be answered super quickly, because I'm sure that's a huge aspect of what you do. But when you are dealing with these large corporations, let's say, what is the top thing that you try to focus on?
So that's definitely a really good question. So I think the few key important pieces, how do you manage is, one is you need strong sponsorship, very, very strong sponsorship. So here we had a very strong sponsor, a senior leader who was a sponsor. So that's one, because if you do not have a strong sponsorship, it just is not going to work well. In fact, it can fail, in fact, for large transformation. The second piece is setting up a very efficient governance is very important to manage the project. So what we've learned is that large transformations, you can get crippled, in fact. And in fact, you can never deliver at the end, because the scope just keeps increasing and increasing. It becomes larger and larger, and the project, you don't deliver. So you need to work in a very agile mode. So you need to set up a governance that works in an agile way. That means try to implement smaller deliverables every 3 to 4 months in a sprint fashion. So that's what we did, setting up, we call it agile transformation. Every 3 to 4 months, we have small deliverables to achieve over the course of time, instead of having large deliverables, essentially, that takes longer time to implement. So that's, I would say, these are the key pieces. The other thing is setting up the governance bodies to manage the programs is also really, really important. The project management setup as well.
Wonderful. And I wish we had more time. You have so much expertise in this subject and so much experience. But Vatsala, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise in this topic. I'm sure we'll see more of you in conferences to come. I'm sure you'll just keep going and going and creating more operational excellency in these companies that you're working with. So thank you so much. If you want, you can turn your video off, and I'll wrap up today's session. Again, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you again. It's a pleasure to be here.
For sure, for sure. Well, we have concluded today's BTOES Healthcare Live 2023 with 4 exceptional presentations. So I want to give just a rapid recap. We'll have you out of here on time. So our journey today has covered an array of topics from the realm of AI in healthcare to the subtle biases ingrained in leadership. Each session has been equally impactful, and they have all left us with valuable takeaways. So to kick things off, we delved into becoming future ready in healthcare, embracing digital transformation with Shrikant Deo and Raj Kangasari. Shrikant left us with a profound insight, emphasizing that enterprises today are constantly facing disruption, with 70% of companies not able to achieve the desired results of digital transformation. That's kind of hard to hear, but I think it's the truth. And then finally, they left us with the soundbite that digital transformation is inevitable. And that last soundbite actually works well with the second session that we heard. So we heard from Bill Wong as he shedded light on the potential of generative AI in healthcare, drawing from his wealth of experience. I think that we can culminate his wisdom in a few following takeaways. The first and foremost is that the amount of changes that are coming at an accelerated pace. We will soon see a great disparity between firms who take the new technologies in stride and those who resist and then don't accept that this is going to happen. Much like how Shrikant said that digital transformation is inevitable, AI is a huge aspect of that. One other thing that Bill Wong said was that if you don't have good data, you don't have a good AI model, because the data is the lifeblood of the AI model. Third, we heard from myself and a colleague, Richard Paul, as we described the 3 stealth deceptions in leadership. Through healthcare anecdotes, we uncovered the 3 biases: the complexity bias, the atlas bias, and the safety bias, that are all rooted in fear that drive us toward a point of no return where our behavior becomes increasingly erratic. And that point of no return is what we call the death line. And we just ask that you keep yourselves aware of the death line as you lead in your positions today. Finally, as we just heard, we concluded our journey with Vatsala Sadasivan, who underscored the critical role of driving operational excellence and transformation in the biopharmaceutical industry. Vatsala's ability to demystify complexity provided us with remarkable insights, leaving us with some key takeaways, such as in R&D culture, scientific excellence trumps operational excellence. And then second, we can do better science by operating more efficiently. So I don't know about you, but I feel inspired. I feel I've got some incredible new learnings that I want to take and start applying in my place of work and my personal life. So as we bid farewell to BTOES Healthcare Live 2023, let's not forget those 3 modern world myths that often hold us back. The first one is that nothing is connected. Second, we have to know everything before we start. And the third is that rational thinking is supreme. Our 4 thought leaders today have shown us firsthand how to overcome these myths. We're all here because we believe we can too. So as we leave this event, let's keep instead these three truths in mind. The first is that everything is connected. Second, you don't have to know everything before you start. And that third, rational thinking is valuable, but it thrives when paired with creative thinking. I'm Andy Tilster. I've been your chairperson today. So happy to be here, so humbled by this experience that I can share the stage with such titans of innovation. Well, with that, I want to bid you adieu, and I want to say until the next BTOES Healthcare Live, possibly in 2024. So with that, I bid you farewell, goodbye, have a great day, and know that you are an innovator and you have potential.